A national policy statement for freshwater here in New Zealand. Details were released. There was a lot of shock and awe around the lack of detail or the way that they intended to execute it. You may have heard about a tractor trek into the centre of Invercargill in Southland, in Gore, my apologies, organised by Laurie Paterson and Bryce McKenzie of Southland, in a bid to make a petition and a noise to the government to say there is changes that need to be done to the policy statement. And Laurie joins us now out of Greenvale. Great to have you on the show. Finally, Laurie. Of all these years, we've had yarns about life.
I know, yeah. People come back to haunt you, Sarah.
I know, they do. So that's why you have to treat everyone nicely. Now, Groundswell NZ, how did the concept come about?
Yeah, well, as you sort of mentioned, with the tractor trek to Gore, that arose out of Bryce McKenzie saying one day, look, these new rules are totally unworkable and we need to do something, and I want to make a statement. I'm going to drive my tractor to Gore. And I said, well, that's fine. I'll come with you. And so two of us set off, and we ended up with 120 tractors, which you might have seen on TV1. And not only that, though, we had a lot of people that said, we would have liked to have been there because it was about the only fine day of the week. And support you guys because we think someone needs to actually stand up and say that this is rubbish. And so we knew that we had, quite a few people behind us, or a lot of people behind us. So out of that, some of the people that were there, we started Groundswell New Zealand, which we thought was an apt name, considering we were getting a bit of a groundswell, and it consists of 2 dairy farmers, 4 sheep and beef farmers, 1 dairy support operator, 3 people that are in the support industries to farming, and 2 contractors. We've got males and females, and we're just an apolitical group. So after we did that, the next thing is, what are we going to do next? Because having created, as I said to Bryce, quite a bit of expectation, we can't just suddenly walk back and, go to the pub in another year's time and say, oh, gee, remember the year we took our tractors to Gore? And this is pretty important. So we were talking to an ex-MP, and he said, well, one thing that you probably need to do is do a petition. He said you can write to your minister as many times as you like, and he will answer your letters, and you can just throw them in the bin. But if you do a petition, it has to be presented to Parliament. It has to then go to a select committee and be discussed, and then it has to go from the select committee to the House and be discussed. So we've enlisted the help of Liz Craig, who's the Labor MP for Invercargill, on the list down there, and she also happens to be on the Select Committee for the Environment. And so she's happy to present us for us. So with that in mind, Groundswell sat down and did the actual petition. Now, it's got to be in someone's name, so it's ended up being in my name, but it is the Groundswell New Zealand petition. So everyone had input into it, yeah.
Now, the scary part about the world that we live in, Laurie, is that a petition seen against a freshwater policy in the eyes of every New Zealander may think that farmers don't want a policy statement for freshwater, but that's not the case, is it?
Well, that's quite right. We're actually very keen on freshwater. Don't get us wrong at all on that. We're all environmentalists at heart, but it's just the fact that these rules are quite simply unworkable in Southland and also in many other parts of the country. And if you want something to happen, you really need to put something out there that people can relate to and work towards. Good to have a long-term goal, and we've all got the long-term goal of getting the very best freshwater we can. But if you simply put something out there that farmers kind of feel insulted about, I think, and they're being treated like a bunch of morons because you've given them, you've told them effectively that they've got to try and implement the impossible. Well, you won't really get buy into it. So,
okay, for those
with that in mind,
yeah.
the actual petition itself the group got together and we drew up what we wanted to put in there, and we covered off a whole lot of things. It was about a page and a half. And I thought in my naivety that we just cut and paste that into what we're going to do. But there's a limit on what you can actually put, not on what you can put, but how many letters you can have in the petition. So we had to change it around a bit. So we're focusing on the health and safety aspect, because obviously people out there trying to work paddocks when they're not right, when it's dangerous and that sort of thing, is not good. Also, the mental well-being and stress of having to try and do the unworkable, if you like. And a lot of young farmers who are pretty highly in debt and being pushed into something like that. So sowing dates obviously comes into it. You can't sow down here until the ground's dry enough and until the ground temperature comes up, which a lot of people don't seem to understand. And seed is also a very expensive thing. So if you throw it on the ground and it doesn't grow, that's not a good option. And farmers anyway are going to want to get those paddocks back into production as soon as they can. So they're going to be sowing it at the very first opportunity. The other thing that we don't want is the EU bureaucracy, which we seem to be creating, being put on top of farmers, because in the history of New Zealand farming, sometimes when things and net incomes have been very low, it's only the fact that we didn't have all those costs that kept us coming through. And it might be good for keeping all the country in jobs perhaps, but for farming, having to get a consent for everything takes away people's initiative. And the other thing is that we believe that it should all be worked through catchment groups, where farmers get involved with the local, like in our case, Environment Southland or the Otago Regional Council, and work through systems of how they can make the catchment right. Because if a farmer is doing a really good job and we can measure it and say, yep, this is good, then why should they have to have a whole lot of costs burdened on them? And really, the catchment group and the regional council really need to work with the ones that perhaps aren't keeping up so much, and help them get up to speed.
So what does good look like when it comes to achieving something that we can as a country hang our hat on and be proud of the way that we farm under environmental regulation, so to our consumers and to our global markets? Because effectively it needs to have a financial outcome at some point in time. And I mean, I'm just trying to work out how we can make changes to what is here that's not just on an individual case-by-case basis that regional councils can get overburdened with consenting on.
Well, I think one of the things is that we are doing a whole lot of stuff now. Farmers are doing heaps of stuff. You've got to watch Country Calendar to see what's going on. And it's easy, of course, to say, look, we're doing a lot, but people say, what are you doing? And in our case, where's the farm that's pretty reflective of around here? And because we've had contact, if you like, with Environment South and got some ideas from them, we've changed the way we do things a lot. So number one is when we've got stock out there winter feeding, and I think that's another thing people need to realise, that places like Otago and Southland, we have a drought every year. It's just called winter. Nothing grows for about 4 months of the year. And not only that, it's very wet. So we have to have crops, or we have to have feed to keep the whole thing going. So one thing we do is we now feed our stock down slopes. So we've got a filter down below it before it gets to any waterway. We don't plough, when we're ploughing paddocks, we don't plough the swales or the little where surface water's going to run down. We leave that in grass for a filter. We're fencing streams. We're doing riparian planting. And we're building also sediment traps, which is effectively a smart word for a dam, to catch any sediment that does run off, and then you can get it out and spread it back onto the paddocks. The other thing that we do in this area is that we've obviously got the ground back into crop back into grass as soon as we can. We do that because about now we're starting to get a thunderstorm time. And so in our situation, we've got about 5 paddocks, if you like, that are in winter crop, and we've got them spread around the farm, so they'll be 1 or 2 kilometres apart. Thunderstorms can be very high rainfall, but pretty localised, and so if anything to do with the weather's a risk. So that's actually spreading the risk that if something did go wrong, we'd have it covered. But if we have to, because of the slope rules, bring all our animals down and just put them down on the flats altogether, and you have a thunderstorm go through it, it's going to have exactly the opposite effect as what they're trying to do, because it will go in the river, absolutely for sure. And we also aerate or deep rip all our crop paddocks, so when it does rain, the rain goes into them rather than run across the top and go out. And just to show what great environmentalists we really are, Sarah, during the lockdown, we trapped 150 magpies to give the Kiruru a chance. So, this is the problem farmers have. They're doing a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's going to come on stream and get better and better and better because nature takes a little while off them, and they just feel like they're getting bagged, really. I've been in South America, and I've also been in South Asia, and I have seen some polluted rivers, and I haven't seen one in New Zealand like that yet. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to do the very best to get the absolute highest standard we can get. And just about every farmer I talk to is keen to do that. We need to get some measurements in place, though. One of the things is we're told that if we work ground over 20 degrees, which we've often done here in the past, that we're going to lose something like 22 tonnes of soil every year. Well, we've been on this property for 120 years, and if that was the case, we'd be sitting on the clay probably waiting for a government handout, and we've got plenty of topsoil. And, where do these figures just appear from? Where's the science behind them? And that's what we're saying. All these things need to have some science behind them. We need to do plenty of measuring, just like the COVID thing. If you don't test people, you don't really know. And this is the same. We should be putting money into testing, and then we can do best practice around that.
Oh, Laurie, you've always been a man of wise words, but no, practically as well. Thank you on behalf of the farming community for making a stand, yourself and Bryce and the bigger team behind Groundswell NZ. It's fantastic to see the momentum that you have built around this, and he is hoping that the government do listen to your concerns for the welfare of New Zealand farmers, and particularly, as you said there, young farmers, highly indebted farmers with this extra pressure. Laurie, have a wonderful Christmas, a big love and extension to your family, and it's fantastic to catch up, and hopefully you get a break as well. Thank you so much, Laurie Paterson.
Thanks, Sarah, and don't ask people to go onto the Groundswell New Zealand website, and if they feel like doing it, do the petition, please. Wonderful.
What's the web address there? We can just give a shout out, Laurie.
It's just on Facebook at groundswell.com. Groundswell NZ, sorry.
Groundswell NZ on Facebook. You can find that petition to support the team at Groundswell NZ on standing up to the details that are, in as Laurie's words, unworkable, and particularly in Southland around the National Policy Statement for Freshwater.
This is Sarah's Country.